All right, let's jump right into this. Today, in our latest explainer, we are unpacking an absolutely wild historical legend. We're talking international espionage, recurring royal dreams, and a ridiculously daring heist aimed at arguably the most influential figure in human history. We're asking the big question: the Zengi Tunnel? Is it myth or is it reality? To figure that out, we are going to meticulously evaluate the historical reliability of this legend using actual scholarly source evidence. So let's get into it.
First, think about how we protect world leaders today, right? The President of the United States or China. We've got bulletproof cars, snipers positioned on rooftops, the Secret Service swarming everywhere. It is intense. But honestly, that is nothing compared to the security surrounding the Prophet's tomb in Medina today. It's on a completely different planet. You have fully restricted airspace, a strict no-fly zone where not even a tiny drone is getting through. The control room monitoring the area happens to be the absolute largest in the entire Arab world. Plus, you've got thousands of security personnel standing guard across 200 different gates every single day. It is a literal fortress.
And the crazy thing is, this security doesn't just stop at the surface, it goes deep underground. The area is wired with highly sensitive seismic radars. So if the ground under Medina shakes even a fraction of an inch, it instantly sends a direct alert to the Saudi military. A single ping on that radar can trigger a nationwide state of emergency, just like that. Impenetrable, right? Well, as we're going to see, it definitely wasn't always this heavily guarded.
Which brings us to a very important number: 800. We need to rewind exactly 800 years. Back then, long before anyone had ever heard of seismic radars or massive digital control rooms, two extremely motivated guys hatched an incredibly dangerous plot. They decided they were going to bypass the security of their time to pull off the unthinkable. They were going to steal the Prophet's body.
Now, you might be wondering, where do we even get this story from? Well, this entire heist is recorded in a really famous book written by a scholar named Al-Simhudi about 500 years ago. This is the exact text that put this incredible legend on the map for everybody. So let's break down exactly what this 500-year-old account claims actually went down.
To really understand how a plot like this could even get off the ground, we have to look at the historical backdrop. At the time, the once great Abbasid Caliphate was completely fractured, just broken into pieces. You had massive internal conflicts with Muslims actively fighting each other. And to make matters worse, Palestine had just been lost. It was a time of huge vulnerability and chaos. And it was exactly during this chaos that two Christian men from a tiny Spanish village saw an opening and hatched their master plan.
And I gotta say, their infiltration strategy was remarkably audacious. These guys weren't just street thugs, they were top-tier infiltrators. Step 1. They grew out these long beards, threw on traditional Muslim clothing, and completely disguised themselves as highly pious, devout men. Step 2. They packed up and relocated all the way to Medina. And their acting? It was so flawless that the locals totally bought it, which led to Step 3. Because they seemed so incredibly holy, they were actually able to secure a house located immediately adjacent to their target, the Prophet's tomb.
So here is how they supposedly pulled off this covert op right under everyone's noses. During the day, they played the part, living like perfect, devout worshippers. But at night, that's when the real work started. They began secretly digging a tunnel from inside their house, angling it straight toward the tomb. When morning came, they'd pack the excavated dirt into bags and just casually dump it in a nearby graveyard. And the public perception during all this? The locals literally just assumed these two holy guys were staying up all night praying. Meanwhile, the tension is just building and building as their tunnel inches closer and closer to the tomb. But then, the narrative suddenly shifts hundreds of miles away, over to Damascus. According to the legend, right as this tunnel is getting dangerously close to succeeding, the Muslim Sultan Nur al-Din Zangi starts having a startling, repeating vision in his sleep.
And this is the brilliant dramatic climax of the whole story. In the Sultan's dream, the Prophet actually appears to him directly, pleading, "O Nur-ad-Din, save me from these two." Now, at first, the Sultan wakes up totally shocked, but he kind of brushes it off as just a weird dream. But then, it happens again. And on the third night, the Prophet appears yet again, but this time, he explicitly shows the Sultan the faces of the two infiltrators.
All right, so now the Sultan is fully convinced this is real, and he springs into action. First, he rushes all the way from Damascus to Medina with his royal guards. Second, to track down these culprits, he throws a mandatory citywide feast. He hands out gifts to everyone just so he can personally look at every single man's face in the city. Third, he realizes two faces are missing. It's those two pious men who supposedly never leave their house. He storms their place, rips up their carpet, uncovers the secret tunnel hidden right beneath it, and promptly has them executed in the marketplace. Boom. This sultan saves the day. I mean, it is an epic, thrilling, blockbuster story, right?
Okay, wait, stop the clock for a second. This whole epic story we just went through, it is completely fake. None of it happened. There was no secret underground tunnel, and Sultan Nur al-Din Zangi never had any magical repeating dream.
Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. Hold on, you literally just told us this was written in an old historical book. How can you confidently sit there and claim it's fake? And you know what? That's a perfectly valid question. So let's pivot away from just telling a campfire story and do some actual forensic historical investigation. Let's dig in and evaluate the scholarly source evidence.
If we put the historical sources side by side, we find our smoking gun pretty quickly. On the left, we have al-Samhudi's book, which is where this legend comes from. But look at the dates here. This was written roughly 300 years after Sultan Zengi actually died. And al-Samhudi's source for this massive event? He literally just writes, "I heard." No chain of narration, no specifics, just a rumor. Now contrast that with the right side. This is the work of Imam Ibn al-Athir. This is a contemporary biography written just a few years after the Sultan died. We're talking about a massive, highly authentic, verified record that spans 10 volumes. And in this incredibly detailed contemporary source, there's zero mention of any tunnel and zero mention of any dramatic rescue. Nothing.
And just to really drive this point home, you have to understand the level of detail in Ibn al-Athir's authentic records. This historian was meticulous. He documented the Sultan's daily habits, he recorded his exact physical appearance, he tracked his posture and exactly how the man sat, he even recorded the exact number of pigeons the Sultan owned. So let's think about this logically. Are we really supposed to believe that a historian who was so detail-oriented that he literally counted the Sultan's pigeons somehow just forgot to mention the monumental, historic event where the Sultan saved the Prophet's tomb from a massive underground infiltration? It's absurd when you really look at it.
Now, some of you might be wondering about a potential theological loophole here. You might be asking, well, couldn't the Prophet theoretically ask for help in a dream? Is it really impossible for a vision like that to happen?
The answer actually lies in a core concept. Divine protection needs no human intervention. Yes, dreams can be deeply spiritual and meaningful, but from a strict theological standpoint, the Prophet does not need the Sultan's help or yours or mine. The Quran explicitly states that Allah protects the Prophet. Throughout his entire life, even while fighting numerous battles, no enemy was ever allowed to cause him major harm, and that divine protection extends in life and in death. So, a human rescue mission organized by a sultan, it's simply unnecessary.
But then we hit another major hurdle, right? How could so many great scholars be wrong? I mean, a lot of us have heard this epic tale from very respected figures, our elders or religious teachers. How could all of them be mistaken about this?
Well, it comes down to a very simple, somewhat humbling truth. Scholars are human, and humans make mistakes. Even the absolute greatest minds can sometimes pass on unverified information without fully realizing it. If those very same respected scholars were presented today with the comparative contemporary evidence we just looked at, the detailed pigeon counting versus the 300-year gap, they would undoubtedly reject this myth, just like any other baseless rumor. And honestly, that brings us to the core takeaway of this entire explainer. We're really talking about the danger of unverified sources. The lesson here isn't just that some 800-year-old story is fake. It's about how incredibly dangerous it is to accept any story, no matter how famous, how beloved, or how respected the person telling it is, if it is not backed up by authentic, contemporary, scholarly evidence.
Because let's look at how this applies to us today in our modern era of misinformation. We are living in a time where fake news is absolutely supercharged. We've got AI-generated fake stories everywhere, deeply manipulated photos and deep fake videos, and endless rumors presented as absolute facts online. If we don't develop our media literacy, if we don't learn to forensically check our sources just like we did with the Sultan story today, we are going to fall right into the trap of passing down inherited myths and digital falsehoods to the next generation. So I want to leave you with one final really powerful question to keep in your back pocket. The next time you hear an incredible story or see a crazy viral post or even hear a fascinating historical legend, stop and ask yourself, when was this source written and by whom? Always demand the contemporary evidence. If you enjoyed this analytical deep dive and want to keep training your brain to spot the truth hidden among the myths, make sure to follow for more of these research-based explainers. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning what you read.